Welcome to the Too Much to Say podcast, where I have too much to say. Episode 12, What Would It Take? We're going to jump in a little bit to how and what it would take to change your opinion about anything. But first, we're going to hop into the weekly random. This week, we cover Trump once more because Trump, for some reason, cannot resist, I guess, becoming more of a fascist. He just can't resist showing his true colors. I don't know how else to describe it. As we know, Trump recently met with Kim Jong-un, and he has had nothing but positive things to say about the dictator Kim Jong-un ever since then. In fact, this week, the quote, he said, "I want my people," speaking about us, about Americans, about myself, to sit up at attention like they do for Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Trump in America, sitting up at attention, respect is earned, not given. I don't care that you're the President of the United States. You are a disgrace to the office. The office of the President of the United States deserves respect. You do not. Stop trying to be a dictator. Stop trying to be a fascist. Make some good decisions. Treat people with respect. And you'll get the respect you so greatly desire. It is as simple as that. This one comes out of Politico, though it was reported by many news outlets. I guess just to move on. According to an Ipsos poll, more Republicans, 19% of Republicans, support Kim Jong-un compared to 17% of Republicans supporting Nancy Pelosi, the Democrat of an elected Congress. More people support the fascist dictator Kim Jong-un than Nancy Pelosi. As much as I dislike Trump, I like Trump more than Kim Jong-un. I mean, Kim Jong-un is everything that Trump wishes he could be, but he's not, because we actually have democratic, boundaries that prevent him from becoming Kim Jong-un. He would if he could, I think. It sure seems like it. That, get some of this. There we go. That won't be purple. But the fact that anyone, it comes down to basically it's not so much that more people, maybe those 17% like Pelosi a lot more than they like Kim Jong-un. It was just basically that 19% of Republicans said that they, here, let me bring up the poll real quick so I can give a better. Do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of the following? More Republicans have a favorable opinion of Kim Jong-un, according to this poll, than Nancy Pelosi. If that doesn't describe what's happening with the Republican Party, I'm not sure it will. But we're going to get into more things because Trump took it to a new level this week. Yeah, brand new level. Let's go. So he continued his Trump continued his trade tariffs tirade this week, introducing new tariffs on China, to which the Chinese media now mocks him, saying, "Fools build walls." Let me bring it up. The wise man builds bridges, the fool builds walls. China. Communist China is making fun of you. Now I get it, they can make fun of you for whatever because they're communist, but they're making fun of you because you are trying to isolate yourself. Because you're building walls. I mean, I like the double entendre here because of the border wall that he wants to build. But can we not build walls? Can we try to engender trade amongst our fellow countries? I think that's how we make money. I think that's how we take care of our economy. Just a thought. I don't think it's through coal. I don't think it's through trying to end trade with our allies, trying to end trade with China. Yeah. But to move on to it's kind of what's actually been distracting me during this whole weekly random is the kind of one of the big stories and how Trump is truly moving towards, I guess, to be honest, Nazism. I mean, people have to understand that the Nazi Party did not start off as World War II. They started off as a small party of people with very bad ideas, but they grew into what would control Germany, what would launch into World War II. But a lot of the principles, which we'll talk a little bit more about today, kind of similar. But to jump in, so Laura Bush, sorry, I'm getting distracted here. Nice. Basically what happened this week is that Trump has decided to separate children from their families at the border, to put them into detention camps, to put them into basically while everything gets worked out in the courts, they're going to separate parents from children. And some very graphic pictures and videos came out. I'm sure you've seen some of them, but they haven't been going well, essentially. But so Laura Bush, being George W. Bush's wife, came out and basically gave an op-ed in the Washington Post. I just figured I could probably read a little bit of that. It's not that long. I'll probably read all of it because I think it's worthwhile. She says, on Sunday, a day we as a nation set aside to honor fathers and the bonds of family, I was among the millions of Americans who watched images of children who have been torn from their parents. In the 6 weeks between April 19th and May 31st, the Department of Homeland Security has sent nearly 2,000 children to mass detention centers, or foster care. More than 100 of these children are younger than 4 years old. The reason for these separations is a zero-tolerance policy for their parents, who are accused of illegally crossing our borders. I live in a border state. I appreciate the need to enforce and protect our international boundaries, but this zero-tolerance policy is cruel, it is immoral, and it breaks my heart. Our government should not be in the business of warehousing children in converted box stores or making plans to place them in tent cities in the desert outside the Alamo. These images are eerily reminiscent of the Japanese-American internment camps of World War II, now considered to be one of the most shameful episodes in U.S. history. We also know that this treatment inflicts trauma. In turn, Japanese have been 2 times as likely to suffer cardiovascular disease or die prematurely than those who were not interned. Americans pride themselves on being a moral nation, on being a nation that sends humanitarian relief to places devastated by natural disasters or famine or war. We pride ourselves on believing that people should be seen for the content of their character, not the color of their skin. We pride ourselves on acceptance. If we are truly that country, then it is our obligation to reunite these detained children with their parents, and to stop separating parents and children in the first place. People on all sides agree that our immigration system isn't working, but the injustice of zero tolerance is not the answer. I moved away from Washington almost a decade ago, but I know that there are good people at all levels of government who can do better to fix this. Recently, Colleen Kraft, who heads the American Academy for Pediatrics, visited a shelter run by the U.S. Office of Refugee Resettlement. She reported that while there are beds, toys, crayons, a playground, and diaper changes, the people working at the shelter had been instructed not to pick up or touch the children to comfort them. Imagine not being able to pick up a child who's not yet out of diapers. 29 years ago, my mother-in-law, Barbara Bush, visited Grandma's house, a home for children with HIV/AIDS in Washington. Back then, at the height of the HIV/AIDS crisis, the disease was a death sentence, and most babies born with it were considered untouchables. During her visit, Barbara, who was the first lady at the time, picked up a fussy, dying baby named Donovan and snuggled him against her shoulder to soothe him. My mother-in-law never viewed her embrace of that fragile child as courageous. She simply saw it as the right thing to do in a world that can be arbitrary, unkind, and even cruel. She, who after the death of her 3-year-old daughter knew what it was to lose a child, believed that every child is deserving of human kindness, compassion, and love. In 2018, can we not find, as a nation, a kinder, more compassionate, and more moral answer to the current crisis? I, for one, believe we can. This is the wife of the last Republican president that we had. Republicans, Democrats, we are better than this. No child deserves to be separated from their parents, not to be ripped from them. This is not Nazi Germany. These are not animals. These are humans. They deserve better. We deserve to be better than this. This is a serious issue, and we need to write our congressmen and both House and Senate, and in November we need to vote for everyone who will stand with us against Trump. Democrat, Republican, Independent, it does not matter. But we need to stand this November. If you are 18 years or older, you need to go to the booths and you need to be informed and you need to vote. We need to stand against this. All right. To break up the serious nature of this podcast, because the next the topic, what would it take, is it's going to be a little serious today as well. So before we get into that topic, let's hop into the where are you at? There it is. Oh, just in cool. The Reddit shower thought of the week. This one comes from that one roadie. He says, or she, since there are 3,600 seconds in an hour and most people make less than $36 an hour, their time is worth less than a penny per second. It's literally worth your time to pick up a penny from the ground. I don't know if it's not really too funny this week, I guess. Kind of, but it is definitely food for thought. And if someone says a penny for your thoughts, then I guess that kind of fits with it. All right. But let's go ahead and let's jump into the main event here. Where's my main event? There's the main event. All right. What would it take to change your mind? All right. For a second, and you may be religious, you may not be religious. But for a second, let's all be religious together. Now, if the leader of your church sexually abused your child, would you stop supporting that church? What if that child was one of your friends? What if it was an acquaintance's child? What if it was a stranger's? What is your threshold? What would cause you to stop supporting a church where the leader would sexually abuse your child or a child of another person? In 2002, this is the exact situation that many people in Boston, Massachusetts, in the Boston, Massachusetts area, and all around the world had to deal with. I just watched the movie Spotlight this week. This is highlighted in that. But it was an issue all over the world, not just in Boston, Massachusetts. Basically, what happened was, for years, the Catholic Church had been hiding many incidences of sexual abuse caused by the priests. I know there's been a lot of good jokes about Catholic priests since then. But what's really interesting is what happened after it was proven by many testimonies, by many survivors, the testimony of many survivors that this happened, is what happened with the attendance of the church. Just to give you some perspective, coming from Dr. Thomas Plant of the Catholic Santa Clara University and a volunteer clinical associate professor at Stanford, he states that approximately 4% of priests during the past half-century, and mostly during the 1960s and 70s, have had a sexual experience with a minor, which is consistent with male clergy from other religious traditions, and is significantly lower than the general adult population, which may double these numbers. So, basically he's saying that 4% of priests, 4% of the people that Catholics around the world trusted in the past half century have had a sexual experience with a minor. Now, to put that in perspective, in 2012, there were a total of 414,313 Catholic priests around the world. 4% of those is 16,572 priests that have sexually assaulted a minor. Now, I promised you a little bit of an attendance, kind of what happened with the attendance. Let's pull up the Catholic Church stats right here. So, Spotlight happened in 2002. This is a real story. That is the Boston Globe. They had a division named Spotlight, and they did the research, and they basically put all the facts together to show that the Catholic Church not only knew about this happening, they were also complicit, because they, instead of letting their priests get indicted and charged and convicted and punished, they actually just kind of swept everything on the rug and then moved the priests from parish to parish. Now, in 2002, this came out thanks to the great work by the Boston Globe. Well, let's take a look at what happened to the attendance in the Catholic Church. So if we look at from 1983 to 1986, we had attendance. This goes from, so 60 plus was 64%, 50 to 59 was 57%, 40 to 49 was 48%, 30 to 39 was 49%, and 21 to 29 was 37%. Now, in the subsequent decades, so that was 83 to 89, or 83 to 86, sorry. As of 2014 to 2017, those numbers have dropped, but not by 100%. The 60 plus was 64. It is now 49. 50 to 59 was 57. It's now it's actually now 31%. Our greatest job. 40 to 49 is now went from 48% to now 40%. Our 30 to 39 range went from 49% to 43%, and 20 to 29 went from 37 to 25. I mean, we're still in the averages somewhere in the high 30s, probably. I'd have to, I mean, this doesn't show, a percentage of people, but probably if you add it all up, it's somewhere in the high 30s. What that means is that for Catholics, for that group of Catholics, the threshold was not knowing that their religion essentially promoted, it definitely allowed, it definitely assisted in sexual abuse of children. Their threshold for changing their mind about their church was higher than that. I think that speaks for itself. All right, so that's the Catholic Church. Let's go a different route. All right. What if the leader of your political party called for violence against another political party? Would you reject your political party? What if the other party started it? What if they were violent first? What if two other political parties you're not one you're a part of, started warring against each other? They started being violent against each other. You're observing this. Would you do something to stop it? All right. Let's take a look at. I made kind of I took the pieces of a political party. I kind of made my own little fictional political party. But let's take a look at it. All right. So what if your political party advocated this? The unification of the United States. Land plus expansion. So we want to get bigger. The United States isn't big enough. We want to grow. We want to grow. Anti-globalism. We don't want to be a part of the UN anymore. Land and territory. We want to firm up those borders. Only a member of the race can be a citizen. No anti-Islam. No Muslim can be a member of the race. Anti-foreigner. No. Only citizens can live in the United States. We don't want any immigrants anymore. No immigration. So we don't Mexicans. Obviously you're a foreigner. You can't be here anymore. Everyone must work. Abolition of unearned income, so no more rent. Nationalization of the industry, division of profits, extension of old age welfare, land reform, death to all criminals. American law, not Roman law. Education to preach the American way. Education of gifted children. Protection of mother and child by outlawing child labor. Encouraging gymnastics and swimming. Strengthening of the national army. Duty of the state to provide for its folk. Duty of the individuals to the state. Did I, at any point, did I step over a line for you? Did any of these offend you? All right, let's take down those. Like I said, those are ones that kind of changed. I actually just made some minor alterations to what. First off, does it sound familiar to you? Do any of those kind of trigger anything in your mind according to our current political parties? Let's take a look, because this is actually this was actually 23 of the 25 points that came in from when the Nazis, basically, they were written by Hitler himself for or at least they were the founding premise of the Nazi Party in Germany in the 1920s. So this is the situation in the 1920s. This small little party came out and basically set a little time frame for you. Germany is reeling. They are off the. This is off the back of losing World War I, being blamed for World War I, and basically being punished pretty stiffly for World War I. Put in a very bad situation as a country, a lot of poverty, and a lot of struggle throughout the entire country. So the Nazi Party came out, and this is what the Nazi Party said. They said unification of Greater Germany, so they want to bring Austria and Germany together because they were separate at the time. Land plus expansion, want to get stronger. Anti-Versailles, so this was basically getting rid of the Treaty of Versailles, which is part of what was so onerous to Germany at the time. Land and territory. Only a member of the race can be a citizen. No Jew can be a member of the race. Only citizens can live in Germany. No immigration. So Jews were not allowed to flee the pogroms, which they were basically being exterminated somewhere else. They were already being exterminated outside of Germany, and they're fleeing to other countries. Everyone must work. Abolition of unearned income, so getting rid of rent. Nationalization of an industry, like you said. I didn't change all of them. Division of profits, a little bit of socialism in there. Extension of old age welfare. Land reform. Death to all criminals. German law, not Roman law. Education to teach the German way. Education of gifted children. Protection of mother and child by outlawing child labor. Encouraging gymnastics and swimming. Formation of a national army, because at that point they weren't allowed to have the national army, thanks to the Treaty of Versailles. Duty of the state to provide for its folk. Duty of the individual to the state. So, I mean, to just have a contemporary comparison, this isn't too dissimilar from many of the tenets of what Trump ran on. Back then, what happened is, so this is in May 1924, this party garnered 6.55%. So the Nazi Party in Germany got 6.55% of the vote. In December, it got 3%, December of 24. And then May of 28, 2.6%. September 1930, 18.25%. And then in 32, 37.27%. Now let me just, in 1924, it was the 6th most popular political party in 24, and then in December 24 it was the 8th, May 28th it was the 9th, September 30th it was the 2nd, and then July 32nd, July 1932 it was the 1st, and it remained in first until November 1933 when 92.11% of people came out and voted for Hitler to basically take over, to basically dissolve the democracy. Now, there's more context. There were other things that were happening during this time. They had communists in Germany as well. Communism and Nazism are not the same thing in the slightest. But you had communism, you had social democrats, you had violence. Nazis were continually committing more and more violence. But as you can kind of see, it was a slow burn. They started off weak, 6.55%, then 3%. They even dropped, and then 2.6%. and then they just rose. At what point in the 25 or 23 points that I have up here would you have said no? At what point in the voting would you have stood up? It's not an easy question. I think that a lot of things happen today that we should be standing up against, but we don't because it's hard. Of course, I didn't change it. That's all right. All right. All right. One more little thought experiment. What if you discovered a new species? You make a hike out to the rainforest. You collect, 20,000 samples, bugs, beetles. I mean, maybe it's fewer if you're going after reptiles or mammals, but you get a good collection. You bring them back, go into the lab, spend 3 to 4 years sorting them, and then another 2 to 3 years identifying them through research, comparisons, linking up with specialists in the field, having them help you to identify them. And then finally, you're like, after all my research, I can identify this organism to be a unique species. That this organism has never been identified before. Well, excuse me. Only for politicians to tell you that you are wrong. That species is not unique. And then companies tell you that you're wrong. And then your parents tell you that you're wrong. Now, after all your research, would their opinions change your mind? Would they change your research? Now, you see, this is what's happening to scientists in global warming. Temperatures on this planet are rising. We hit global records, it seems, monthly. Humans are one of the main causes. Scientists from all parts of the world, including NASA, have done research that proved that carbon dioxide, which is added to the atmosphere by human activity, is raising the temperature of the Earth. You can Google proof of global warming and go to the first page. It should read climate.nasa.gov/evidence. You can even just type that into your browser. Now, the point of this podcast was actually not to convince you of Nazism, not to convince you of global warming, or to push away your religious beliefs. The point was really to ask one single question. What would it take for you to change your mind? Now, sometimes, I guess the point is that you should question everything that you think you know. Everything that you know and that you think you know, you should be questioning it all the time. Do not let anything be unshakable. Facts change all the time. Science grows. The world changes. Hitler was, at one point, while though not harmless, he was just a member of a political party. And people are very scared to compare Trump to Hitler. Now, they would be correct that you should not compare Trump to Hitler if you're talking about Hitler of 1946, Hitler of World War II. Now, would they be so wrong if they compared him to Hitler of 1930, 1926, when the Nazi Party was first starting off? Maybe not. Things change. The world changes. It is dynamic. And it is important for us, regardless of our political party affiliation, our religion, our creed, our scientific belief or otherwise, it is important for us to always question, always seek out the truth. But then once we've found that truth, once we have that conviction is what grounded in well-founded evidence, to cling to it. It's tempting. It's hard, I should say. It's hard sometimes to do that. It's hard to be founded in evidence and yet let our beliefs be questioned. If evidence came out that proved that global warming was not our fault, that the carbon dioxide that we added to the atmosphere was not actually heating the planet up, and they could prove that with evidence, then that'd be all right. I mean, I think we'd all be all right. We'd all be happy that we're not ruining the planet. But at the end of the day, it's a simple math equation. The more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the greater the greenhouse effect. The more greater the greenhouse effect, the greater the heat. The temperature goes up. We start to melt the ice caps. We start to change climates. We start to make it so animals can't live in certain areas. We start to make it so the growing season changes places. And we start to change the climate and temperatures, rain patterns, wind patterns of the entire planet. Now, since we're on global warming, just to be clear, we're not going to kill the planet. If we keep going down this path, we're going to kill the planet for humans. The planet will keep on without us. We'll make it very difficult on ourselves, whereas if we could resist, if we could change just a little bit, life could be pretty good. My favorite example of this in history actually is the French Revolution. Compared to the English Revolution, you don't hear about an English Revolution because there was none, but they did go from a monarchy to a democracy. Whereas the French monarchy was not willing to give up their power, because as we know, there still is a queen, there still are dukes and duchesses, princes and princesses over in England, but they have basically no authority. Whereas in France, and that's because they agreed to the Magna Carta, which created the democracy. The French monarchy, however, did not allow this to happen. So what happened to France, the French monarchy, is they got beheaded. There was the French Revolution. People stormed the Bastille, and then they killed Marie Antoinette. And they killed her husband. I forget which king. King Louis, I think. And they killed both of them. Because the French were not willing to change. The French monarchy was not willing to change. My point in that was that we will be like that with climate. So when we find something that is true, that is founded in evidence, we need to change. We need to adapt that into our beliefs. It doesn't matter how old you are. I mean, people say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. We can't allow that to be us. Being an old dog isn't a problem. It's about having an open mind. It's about being willing to see the future. We want there to be a future. We want there to be more. We need to be willing to change. So ask yourself, what would it take to change your opinion? And make sure you're in a good place. This is something I bring up to myself all the time. And I think it makes me, at the end, consider things a little more logically, a little more critically. Well, all right, that's the end. That's all I got for today. So thanks for listening. And if you want to catch more of us, This is episode 12, so there are 11 more. Or more of me, I guess, for a lot of the part. So feel free to catch episodes 1 through 11. I stream live every Tuesday at 8:30 Eastern Time at twitch.tv/HectorMeow. We are on all major podcast providers, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, or you can catch us direct at Audio Boom. Too Much to Say. That is the number 2. Number 2 say. And please give us a follow, like, subscribe, depending where you're finding us. If it's Twitch or if it's on if iTunes, give us 5 stars if you enjoyed it, and hit us up with a subscribe so you can catch more of it next week. Until then, I appreciate you, and have a great week. One final thing is that I will be live on Saturday at 8:30 p.m. doing a sports edition of Too Much to Say. Because as you can tell from my hat, which is an Atlanta Braves hat, I'm a huge sports fan. So we're going to break things up, kind of do culture and politics during the Tuesday edition of Too Much to Say, and we will do the sports edition on Saturdays, 8:30. We'll cover esports, but we'll also cover baseball, the World Cup, and basically anything that's happened in the world of sports that week. So again, follow us if you'd like that, or come visit me on Twitch. I'd love to have you. That's 8:30 p.m. on Saturdays. That's 8:30 time Eastern on Saturdays. Again, I appreciate you. Thanks for listening.